Welcome to Dreamscribe, your companion on the journey to peaceful sleep. Before you drift off, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps this calming community grow. Where in the world are you tuning in from? I don't believe in ghosts, or curses, or storms that follow you like something alive. At least I didn't. Not until the night I heard my name in the thunder. It started out like any other trip. Just me, my RV, and the open road. I wasn't running from anything, at least, that's what I told myself. I liked the freedom of it, the way the scenery changed every day. There was no boss breathing down my neck, no rent to pay, no one to answer to but myself. If I got bored, I moved on. If I wanted solitude, I parked in the middle of nowhere. That night, I'd picked a spot just off a winding back road in Kansas. Flat fields stretched for miles in every direction, broken only by distant farmhouses and the occasional tree line. The summer heat was suffocating, the air thick and still. Even with every window open, my RV felt like an oven. I should have checked the forecast. Maybe then I wouldn't have parked in the path of a storm. The first rumble of thunder rolled in as I was making dinner, low and distant, like a warning. I glanced out the window. The horizon had turned dark, thick clouds creeping in faster than seemed natural. Still, I wasn't worried. I'd camped through storms before. The RV could handle some heavy rain. By the time I settled in for the night, the wind had picked up, rocking the RV in slow, rhythmic creaks. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the storm build. Then the thunder came again, closer this time. A sharp crack of sound, followed by a deep, rolling growl that seemed to linger in the air. And underneath it, something else. A voice. It was faint, almost drowned out by the rain, but it was there. A single, stretched-out syllable buried within the thunder, like a name being spoken. I sat up, heart pounding. I must have imagined it. I waited, holding my breath as the storm swelled around me. Another flash of lightning lit up the RV for a split second, and then, boom. The next thunderclap came, louder than before, and this time, the voice was clearer. A name. A real name. I couldn't make it out completely, but it had weight, like someone calling across a vast, empty space. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't my imagination. I grabbed my phone and checked the weather app. No alerts. No extreme conditions. Just light thunderstorms in the area. I told myself I was being stupid. Thunder didn't talk. My brain was just pulling patterns from the noise, trying to make sense of random sound. It was a trick of the mind. I turned over, closed my eyes, and willed myself to sleep. But sleep didn't come. The storm wasn't passing. If anything, it was getting worse. The rain drummed against the roof in frantic bursts, the wind howling around me. I checked the time, 3:12 a.m. Another crash of thunder rocked the RV. Boom. And this time, the voice was so clear it made my skin crawl. Matthew. I bolted upright, my breath caught in my throat. That was a name. A real, unmistakable name. I didn't know a Matthew. I didn't have a friend, a family member, or even an acquaintance named Matthew. But the way the storm said it, it wasn't random. It was calling. I sat there, frozen, as the thunder rolled again, whispering that same name, stretching it out, distorting it in the static. I needed to see the storm. Heart hammering, I climbed out of bed and pulled back the curtain. Lightning flashed, illuminating the field outside. And in that brief, white-hot second, I saw something. A figure. Standing out in the open, too far to make out details, but close enough that my gut twisted with a primal sense of wrongness. It was facing me. I stumbled backward, the curtain slipping from my fingers. The RV rocked again, wind slamming against the side. The rain grew heavier, sheets of water cascading down the windows. I could barely see through them now, but I knew something was out there. And then the thunder came again. Louder. Closer. And this time, it spoke a different name. Elena. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking. I had no idea who to call. The cops. What would I even say? A storm is talking to me? A shadow is standing in the field? No one would believe me. Another flash of lightning illuminated the landscape. The figure was gone. I swallowed hard, pulse hammering in my ears. No, this wasn't real. It couldn't be. I fumbled to open my weather app again. The storm wasn't even on the radar. That was the moment true fear settled in. This wasn't a normal storm. It wasn't just following me. It was calling. And I had a sickening feeling that if I stayed here much longer, it would say my name next. The storm didn't pass. I stayed awake until dawn, listening. Every time the thunder rolled in, my body tensed, bracing for another name. Another whisper. another voice hidden inside the storm. But as the night crawled on, the thunder softened, the rain eased, and the unnatural voices faded into silence. By morning, the sky was clear, bright blue with no trace of the storm that had been there only hours before. The air was warm again, thick with the humidity of early summer, as if nothing had happened. I should have felt relief, but I didn't. I felt watched. I stepped outside, squinting against the morning sun. My boots crunched against damp earth, and I scanned the open fields around me. Nothing. Just grass swaying in the breeze, the distant outline of a barn, the shimmer of heat rising from the road. There was no sign of the figure I'd seen in the lightning. No footprints. No evidence that anyone had stood there, staring at my RV in the dead of night. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe exhaustion had played tricks on my mind. That's what I told myself as I packed up and got back on the road. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the storm wasn't done with me. The storm follows. I drove west, deciding to put as much distance as possible between me and that empty Kansas field. I didn't have a set destination, just the next place, the next stretch of road, the next night spent under an open sky. The radio played softly as I drove, the hum of static occasionally breaking through the music. Outside, the landscape blurred past, rolling fields, stretches of highway that cut through small towns, gas stations with faded signs and cracked pavement. I told myself the storm had been a one-time thing, until the clouds returned. At first, I barely noticed them, just a few wisps of gray in the distance, harmless against the afternoon sun. But as the miles passed, they thickened, deepened, darkened. By the time I pulled into a rest stop that evening, the sky had turned a sickly shade of gray. I stepped out of the RV, feeling the air shift around me. The heat of the day had disappeared, replaced by something colder, heavier. The scent of rain lingered in the air, though it hadn't started falling yet. I glanced at my phone. No storm warnings, no alerts. But I knew better. I wasn't alone. Not really. The storm was back, and it had followed me. The first incident. I tried to ignore it. I locked up the RV, made dinner, and forced myself to focus on normal, mundane things. Dishes, cleaning, writing in my journal. But when the thunder started again, my hands froze. A low, distant rumble. Then another. I swallowed hard, my grip tightening around my pen. It was just a storm. Just a normal, passing storm. Then the next clap of thunder came. And this time I heard it. A name. Elena. The same name I'd heard last night. I shot up from my seat, my pulse pounding in my ears. It wasn't real. It wasn't. I turned on the radio, blasting the volume. The music drowned out the storm for a moment, filling the RV with something normal, something safe. But then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the entire RV shuddered, like something had grabbed hold of it. The radio cut out. A burst of static filled the silence, crackling like a distant voice trying to push through. And then, boom. Thunder crashed so loud it rattled the windows. And this time it said a new name. Daniel. I turned off the radio. I didn't want to hear any more. The call for help. I grabbed my phone and opened the weather app again. Nothing. I switched to a news app, searching for storm reports, strange weather patterns, anything that could explain this. Still nothing. Finally, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called someone. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice picked up. Dude, what the hell? Do you know what time it is? It was Jesse, one of the few friends I had left after years on the road. I just need to ask you something, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Have you ever heard of storms that talk? A long pause. Are you high? I ran a hand over my face. No, I don't know, man. Something weird is happening. Weird how? I hesitated. How could I explain this without sounding insane? Thunder. It's saying names. Another long silence. Then a chuckle. You seriously woke me up for this? I'm not joking, Jesse. I could hear him shifting in bed. Look, man. Thunder is just sound waves bouncing around the atmosphere. Your brain probably picked up on something that sounded like a name, and... A crash of thunder cut through the RV. Loud. Close. And this time, I didn't just hear the name. I felt it, like it had been whispered directly into my ear. James. I dropped the phone. The call ended. I barely noticed, because when I turned toward the window, there was a handprint on the glass. And it wasn't mine. The storm gets closer. I sat there, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I hadn't touched the window. I knew I hadn't. But the handprint was there, clear as day, pressed against the glass from inside the RV. I grabbed a rag, wiped it clean, and then checked the locks on the doors. They were all bolted, secured. No way someone had gotten inside. No way something had gotten inside. But the storm outside was watching. I could feel it. I could hear it, even in the silence. It was waiting to whisper another name. I should have left. I should have started the RV and driven as far away as possible. But I didn't, because deep down I knew it would always follow. And worse, I had the sinking feeling that the next name it spoke would be mine. I didn't sleep. How could I? I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel, watching the storm in the distance like it might lunge at me. The sky had turned black. Not the natural darkness of night, but something heavier, denser, the kind of darkness that felt alive. The clouds pulsed, shifting like they were breathing. And the thunder, it was getting closer. Each rumble dragged across the sky, stretching longer than it should, as if the storm was speaking, pulling the names from somewhere deep, somewhere wrong. The thunder knows me. I forced myself to breathe, deep, slow. I had two choices. Start the RV and drive. Stay and face whatever was happening. The rational part of me screamed to run. But a different part, the part gripped by some morbid, paralyzed curiosity, kept me rooted to my seat. Then the next thunderclap hit. Boom. And this time, the voice didn't whisper a stranger's name. It whispered mine. Ethan. My body went cold. I sat there, every muscle locked in place, my mind racing. It wasn't just saying random names. It was saying mine. How? I hadn't told anyone where I was. I hadn't posted anything online. I had been alone for weeks. The storm knew me. That was impossible, wasn't it? The radio turns on by itself. A sharp burst of static ripped through the RV. The radio flicked on, the dial spinning wildly through channels. Voices blurred together, advertisements, music, news reports, before settling on pure static. Then, a voice pushed through. Not from outside, from the radio. It was distant, broken, like someone speaking underwater. Ethan. I lunged forward and twisted the knob, trying to shut it off. Nothing. The volume knob wouldn't move. I yanked the power cord from the dashboard. The radio kept playing. The voice crackled again, louder this time. Why did you leave us? My stomach twisted. I knew that voice. It was my brother's. The past comes back. My breath hitched. Daniel. It sounded just like Daniel. But it couldn't be. Daniel had been dead for 5 years. A car crash. A rainy highway. A single flash of lightning before his car spun off the road. The memory rushed back, sharper than it had been in years. The last time I had spoken to him, we had argued. You never listened to me, Ethan. You always just run away. I never got the chance to apologize. Now his voice was crackling through my radio. You left me. I gritted my teeth. This isn't real. I slammed my fist into the radio. The sound cut out. Silence. For a moment, I thought I had stopped it. Then from somewhere outside, thunder rumbled, and through the deep, rolling growl, Daniel. I felt sick. This storm wasn't random. It wasn't just following me. It was calling me. The knock on the door. A knock broke through the silence. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I snapped toward the door, heart hammering. No. There was no way. I was alone. I was in the middle of nowhere. No one could have walked up to my RV in the middle of a storm. I held my breath. Another knock. Louder this time. I reached for the nearest weapon, a rusty wrench lying in the passenger seat. I took slow, careful steps toward the door, my fingers tight around the handle. Another knock. I swallowed hard, forcing my shaking hand to grab the door's latch. I had to look. I had to know. I yanked the door open. Nothing. The wind howled. Rain splattered against the ground. The field beyond the RV stretched into pure blackness, empty and endless. No footprints. No sign of anyone. But before I could close the door, I saw it. A single piece of paper lying on the RV's step. I bent down, my breath fogging in the cold air. There was something written on it. I picked it up. My stomach dropped, because I recognized the handwriting. It was Daniel's, for words were scrawled across the page. Why did you leave? My vision blurred. My hands trembled. I stumbled backward, the paper crumpling in my grip. This wasn't possible. Daniel was dead. I had buried him. Hadn't I? The impossible happens. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I was done pretending this was in my head. Something was happening. Something real. And it wasn't just about the storm. It was about me. I turned back toward the driver's seat, ready to leave, ready to drive until the RV ran out of gas. And then I heard breathing. Not mine. Someone else's. I froze. The sound was close. Inside the RV. I turned my head slowly toward the back. The bedroom door was open just a crack. Beyond it, nothing but pure blackness. The breathing was coming from inside. A deep, wet inhale. And then, a whisper. Ethan. The air left my lungs. I ran. I didn't think. I just ran. I dove into the driver's seat, turned the key. The engine wouldn't start. I twisted the key again, hands shaking. Click. Click. Nothing. The air turned frigid. Behind me, I heard the soft creak of the bedroom door opening wider. I felt something step closer. I felt the pressure in the air shift. I felt something watching me. The radio crackled back to life. Through the static, a voice. Daniel's voice. You left me. I squeezed my eyes shut. You're not real. Thunder rolled across the sky. Boom. And through the rumbling roar, the storm spoke again. Ethan. Something touched my shoulder. Ice cold. I screamed. And then, the RV roared to life. I slammed my foot on the gas. The tires spun in the wet dirt, and then I was moving. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating nothing but rain and an empty road. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I just drove, as fast as I could, away from the storm, away from whatever had whispered my name. But as the RV sped down the highway, I realized something horrifying. The storm wasn't getting smaller in my rearview mirror. It was keeping up. And worse, the next time the thunder spoke, it wasn't my name it whispered. It was my mother's. The climax, 2,000 words. The road stretched endlessly ahead of me, slick with rain, swallowed by the storm that refused to let me go. I was driving too fast, tires skidding on the wet asphalt, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. The RV rattled violently, each gust of wind slamming into the sides like an invisible hand pushing me back. And the thunder wouldn't stop whispering names. First, it had been mine, then my brother's. Now, boom. Margaret, my mother's name. My hands clenched the wheel so hard my knuckles burned. No, it's just a storm. It's just the wind, the pressure, my own paranoia. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't just a storm. It was something else. Something alive. And it wanted me to listen. Nowhere to run. The headlights barely cut through the sheets of rain hammering down. The wipers struggled to keep up, smearing the windshield with streaks of water that blurred everything. I had no idea where I was going. The road signs were unreadable. The GPS had died hours ago. My phone, dead. But it didn't matter. I just needed to keep moving. I risked a glance in the rearview mirror. My stomach dropped. The storm wasn't behind me anymore. It was above me. Lightning flashed, illuminating the highway for a split second. And in that instant, I saw something standing on the road ahead. A silhouette, motionless in the rain. Tall, still, waiting. I slammed the brakes. The RV skidded, fishtailing wildly. My heart slammed against my ribs. The moment the tires screeched to a stop, I looked up. The figure was gone. The passenger. My breathing came hard and fast. I wiped the fog from the windshield, scanning the road. Empty. Nothing but darkness and rain. Did I imagine it? I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temples. Get a grip, Ethan. I put the RV back into gear. A soft creak echoed from the back. My blood froze. It came from the bedroom. No, I locked the door. I locked it. I forced myself to turn my head. The bedroom door was open. I hadn't heard it swing. I hadn't felt the RV shift. But now it was slightly ajar, revealing a sliver of pitch-black darkness inside. And then, a whisper. Ethan. I whirled back to the front seat and jammed my foot on the gas. The engine roared, tires screeching against the wet road. The RV lurched forward, but something was wrong. It felt heavy, like I wasn't driving alone anymore. Like something had stepped inside. I felt it before I saw it. The air turned icy, my breath fogging up immediately. Then, through the corner of my eye, the rearview mirror, a shadow sat in the passenger seat. Not next to me, but in the mirror's reflection. I clenched the wheel, refusing to look directly. Just keep driving. Just don't look. A long silence stretched between us. Then, the voice came again, closer this time. Why did you leave me? The breath left my lungs. It was Daniel's voice. I squeezed my eyes shut. You're not real. A long silence. Then, a hand touched my shoulder. The storm breaks. I swerved, the RV skidding sideways. For the first time I looked. The passenger seat was empty, but the hand was still there, gripping my shoulder. Ice cold, wet, unmistakable. I screamed. The storm roared, the thunder cracking so loud it felt like the sky was splitting in half. Lightning flashed again, and for a fraction of a second, I saw a face in the mirror. Pale, bloated with water, eyes sunken in black. Daniel, my dead brother. And he was smiling. The RV tilted, tires losing grip on the rain-slicked road. I spun the wheel desperately, but it was too late. The RV went airborne. For a moment, everything slowed. The headlights illuminated the sheer drop beyond the guardrail. A ravine. I was falling. The last thing I heard was the thunder. And this time, it didn't whisper a name. It screamed. Darkness. Cold. A distant ringing in my ears. Then, pain. I sucked in a ragged breath, my ribs burning. My head pounded. My vision swam. I was alive. Barely. The RV lay crumpled at the bottom of the ravine. The windshield was shattered. The roof had caved in slightly. Rain poured through the broken windows. I tried to move. Pain shot through my leg. Broken. I wasn't going anywhere. And then, footsteps. Soft. Deliberate. Approaching. I went still. A shadow passed in front of the flickering headlights. A shape emerged from the rain. Tall. Still. Waiting. Face to face. My breath hitched. It was him. Daniel. He stood just outside the broken windshield, staring down at me. His skin was pale, waterlogged, peeling in places. His lips were dark blue, like he had been pulled from a river. And his eyes, they were completely black. "Ethan," he whispered. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He took a slow step forward. I tried to move, but pain exploded through my body. I was trapped. Daniel knelt beside me. "You left me," he whispered. I shook my head violently. I couldn't. He reached out. I flinched, but his hand didn't strike me. Instead, he touched my chest, right over my heart. And suddenly, I wasn't in the ravine anymore, dragged into the past. I was in the car, Daniel's car. Rain slammed against the windshield. The wipers moved frantically. I was in the passenger seat. Daniel gripped the wheel, knuckles white. "You never listened to me, Ethan," he muttered. "You just run away." My stomach dropped. This was the last time I had seen him. The night he died. Lightning flashed. The same flash I had seen that night. Daniel's eyes flicked toward me, and then the car spun out of control. I screamed. The impact hit like a freight train. Metal crunched. Glass shattered. Darkness swallowed me whole. Gasp. I was back in the ravine, lying in the wreckage of the RV. Rain still poured. The storm still raged. Daniel was still kneeling beside me. His hand was still on my chest, and his expression was soft now. "I didn't mean to leave you," I choked out. Daniel tilted his head. The thunder rumbled again, softer this time, like it was waiting. Then, Daniel smiled. Not the twisted grin from the mirror. A real smile. A sad one. The storm began to pull away. Daniel stood. The wind whispered. And just like that, he was gone. The storm left with him. For the first time in days, the sky was silent. 5. The psychological horror conclusion, 2,000 words. The silence felt wrong. After days of thunder screaming my name, of lightning ripping open the sky like a jagged wound, the absence of sound should have been relief. But instead, it felt like a trick, like something was just waiting. I lay in the wreckage of my RV, my body bruised, my leg useless. Rain still drizzled through the shattered windshield, but the wind had vanished. The storm was gone, and so was Daniel. I should have felt closure. I should have felt something. But all I felt was the weight of the air pressing in, like the world was holding its breath. Because deep down I knew. This wasn't over. The sound of nothing. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the wreckage. Minutes. Hours. The rain slowed to a soft drizzle, then stopped altogether. But I stayed, waiting, listening, half expecting to hear my name whispered one last time. Nothing came. I forced myself to move. Pain tore through my ribs, my leg useless dead weight, but I had to get out. I reached for my phone, still dead, and used my elbows to drag myself toward the broken RV door. The road loomed high above me, the ravine walls steep and slick with mud. No way I was climbing out. I needed to wait for someone to find me. Unless no one did. A dark thought slithered into my mind. What if this was the storm's final trick? What if I was already dead? What if I had never survived the crash? I closed my eyes and pressed my fingers into the mud beneath me, feeling the wet earth, the sting of cold air against my skin. No, I was alive. I had to be, didn't I? The man at the edge of the road. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the sky, but eventually, a sound cut through the silence. Crunch. A footstep. My entire body locked up. Slow. Deliberate. Coming closer. I turned my head, and there he was, standing at the edge of the ravine. A man, dressed in a long, dark coat, face shadowed by the dim light of a dying sun. I opened my mouth to call out, but something stopped me. Something about him was off. He stood too still. Didn't move. Didn't shift his weight. Just watched. Waiting. Then, as if he could feel my eyes on him, he tilted his head. And suddenly I was back in the RV, before the crash, staring into the rearview mirror. I remembered the silhouette standing on the road that night. I remembered the way it vanished the moment I looked directly at it. Now, standing at the edge of the ravine, this man had the same stillness. The same impossible presence. Was it him? Had he been following me this whole time? The thought sent a cold shiver through my bones. I tore my gaze away, squeezing my eyes shut. When I opened them again, he was gone. Rescue. By the time headlights finally cut through the dark, I was barely conscious. A truck stopped at the top of the ravine, and a man in a yellow raincoat climbed down, calling out to me. His voice sounded distant, like he was speaking through water. I felt hands gripping my shoulders, shaking me, checking for injuries. I wanted to tell him about the man at the edge of the road, but when I looked back, there were no footprints in the mud. And when the paramedics loaded me onto a stretcher, I could still feel the weight of unseen eyes watching me. Nothing is ever over. They kept me in the hospital for a week. My injuries were bad, 3 cracked ribs, a broken leg, a mild concussion. The doctors kept asking me about the accident, but I had no answers. How did I lose control of the RV? What caused the crash? I could have told them. I could have told them about the storm that whispered names, the shadow in my rearview mirror, the thing that climbed into my passenger seat and touched my shoulder. But I didn't, because I wasn't sure they were gone, because I still heard it. Not the thunder, not Daniel, but something else, something quieter, something that never left. At night, in the hospital room, I could hear it, a faint breath, a presence standing just outside my vision, watching, waiting. And then, on the 4th night, I heard it, a whisper so soft I barely caught it. Not my name, someone else's, a name I had never heard before, but I knew what it meant. The storm wasn't finished. It had just found someone new. Next story. The road bathed in endless light. If there's one thing I've learned from living on the road, it's that every journey has an ending. Every stretch of highway eventually fades into another. Every night gives way to morning, and every sunset eventually bows to the stars. That's how it's supposed to be. At least, that's what I thought. This trip was supposed to be simple. A solo drive west, across empty highways, with nothing but my RV and the open road ahead. I wasn't in a rush, wasn't escaping anything in particular, just the usual dull routines of life. I wanted the quiet, the solitude. Maybe I was chasing some kind of freedom, the kind only the road can offer. But now, I don't think I'm going anywhere. The sun hasn't moved in hours. A perfect evening that never ends. It started as a beautiful drive, one of those golden hour evenings where everything feels unreal. The sky was painted in soft orange and pink, stretching endlessly over the horizon. The light hit the road just right, turning the asphalt into a river of gold, shimmering beneath my tires. I remember glancing at the clock, 7:42 p.m. The sun was low, just touching the distant hills, long shadows spilling over the road. Perfect timing. I'd planned to stop for the night soon, maybe find a scenic pull-off to park and relax. But as I kept driving, the sun stayed exactly where it was. It didn't sink lower, didn't change. I chalked it up to a trick of perception. Maybe I was driving west, following the sun, keeping it in view longer than usual. But an hour passed, then another, and the sun never moved. The first unsettling sign. I pulled over at a small roadside rest area, a cracked asphalt lot with a single vending machine humming outside a locked visitor center. The place was empty. I stepped out of the RV, stretching, expecting the air to have cooled. But it was still warm, uncomfortably so. The same thick, golden heat from 2 hours ago clung to my skin. I checked my phone. No signal. The time? Still 7:42 p.m. I frowned, refreshing the screen, flipping through apps. Nothing updated. My GPS was frozen, the map refusing to load. The sun still hung at the horizon, painting the world in an eerie, perpetual glow. I rubbed my eyes. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe something was off with my phone. A quick nap would fix everything. So I climbed back into the RV, locked the doors, and pulled the curtains shut. I lay down, closed my eyes, waited for night to fall. Time doesn't work here. I don't know how long I was asleep. It felt like hours. But when I woke up, the world was exactly the same. Same golden light. Same warmth. I sat up too fast, heart pounding. My phone screen glowed in the dim RV. 7:42 p.m. The air felt heavy, pressing against my chest. I swallowed, rubbing my arms. Maybe my phone was broken. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. I peeked out the curtain, expecting darkness. Instead, I saw the same untouched horizon, the sun still sitting exactly where it had been. I forced a laugh. What the hell? My voice sounded small in the silence. I checked my watch. 7:42 p.m. The dashboard clock. 7:42 p.m. I turned the ignition, watching the glowing numbers on the RV's radio screen. 7:42 p.m. Something cold coiled in my stomach. No, this wasn't right. I grabbed my keys, opened the door, and stepped outside again, half expecting the world to snap back to normal. But the air was the same thick, golden warmth. The vending machine hummed. The same breeze rustled the dry grass at the edge of the lot, and the sun had not moved. The moment I realized I was trapped, panic crept in like a slow chill, crawling up my spine. I needed to reset my brain, get out of this weird rest area, keep moving. So I got back in the RV, turned the key, and pulled onto the highway, pushing the gas pedal hard. I drove fast, faster than I should have. The road blurred past in streaks of gold and gray. The sky stayed the same. The sun remained frozen at the horizon, watching. After 30 miles, nothing had changed. After 50 miles, the golden light remained. After 100 miles, my hands were shaking on the wheel. No matter how far I drove, the sun never set. And then I saw something ahead. A small roadside rest area. The same cracked asphalt lot. The same vending machine humming outside a locked visitor center. My stomach dropped. I slammed the brakes, heart hammering. My headlights fell over familiar shapes, the faded sign, the broken fence near the entrance. It was the same rest area, the one I'd left hours ago, but I hadn't turned around. I hadn't. My breath came fast and uneven. This wasn't possible. This wasn't possible. I turned the wheel and pulled out again, driving harder, faster, watching the road blur beneath me. I needed to find another town, a gas station, anything. But after another 50 miles, I saw it again. The same rest area, the same vending machine, the sun still hanging exactly where it had been. I hit the brakes so hard the tires screeched. My hands were slick with sweat as I gripped the wheel, staring. No. This wasn't happening. I threw the RV into reverse, spinning the wheel, turning back the way I'd come. If the road looped, I'd find proof. I'd come across something familiar, something I'd already passed. I drove for another hour. Nothing changed. The sun never moved. The sky never darkened. And when I finally saw something in the distance, my stomach turned to ice. Because it was the same goddamn rest area. The thing that watches from the sun. I sat frozen in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles went numb. There was no way this was real. No way I was just stuck. My eyes flicked up to the horizon, to the sun. And for the first time, I noticed something wrong with it. A distortion. A shadow against the brightness, something barely visible, shifting inside the golden glow. Watching, I felt it before I saw it. A cold, pressing weight in my chest. A presence. The sun was not a sun. It was an eye, and it had been looking at me this entire time. Looping roads and silent highways. I tried everything to break free. I must have driven 100 miles in either direction, but every time, I ended up at the same rest stop. The cracked asphalt lot, the humming vending machine, the locked visitor center. It didn't matter how fast I drove or how many turns I took. I always came back. The GPS refused to load. The radio only spat out static. My phone, even when restarted, stayed frozen on 7:42 p.m. It was like I was trapped in a moment, locked inside a single sliver of time, one never-ending sunset stretching into infinity. And I wasn't alone, because the sun was watching me. Desperate attempts to escape. I tried to reason it out. Maybe my brain was fried from exhaustion. Maybe I was hallucinating, my body punishing me for too many back-to-back hours on the road. That had to be it. So I stopped. I pulled into the rest area and forced myself to eat, to drink water, to act normal. The vending machine was the only thing working. I fed it a crumpled bill, half expecting it to spit the money back, but the machine whirred to life, dropping a bottle of water into the tray. Something about that felt wrong. It was too ordinary. Everything else in this place was frozen, time locked at 7:42 p.m., and yet this machine still followed its usual function. I hesitated, then bent down and grabbed the bottle, twisting the cap open. The water was warm. Not room temperature, warm, like it had been sitting under direct sunlight for hours. I drank it anyway. The distant figure. After eating, I tried one last time to leave. I got in the RV, cranked the engine, and floored the gas pedal. The highway stretched empty ahead, bathed in the same golden light. The further I drove, the more I felt like I was being watched. I kept checking the mirrors, convinced something was behind me. Then movement. A dark speck in the distance. At first, I thought it was a road sign or an abandoned car. But as I got closer, my stomach twisted. It was a person. They were standing in the middle of the road, not moving. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching, my breath catching in my throat. My hands shook on the wheel as I stared at the figure ahead. The golden light warped their features, but I could tell something was wrong with them. They were too tall, their arms too long, and their face, blurred, like the sun itself refused to cast proper shadows over them. I blinked, and they were gone. Shadows in the light. I gasped, looking around wildly. The road ahead was empty. Had I imagined it? I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. My heart pounded in my ears. Then, tap, tap, tap. Something knocked on the side of the RV. From the passenger window. I turned my head, slow as death. There was nothing there. The golden light poured through the glass, thick and blinding, but the seat beside me was empty. I swallowed hard, my entire body frozen. My breath came shallow and fast, my pulse hammering against my ribs. And then, the knock came again, from the driver's side. I nearly jumped out of my skin. My hand darted for the door locks, pressing them down in a panic. My breathing turned ragged. My skin burned from the warm air, sweat dripping down my neck. I forced myself to look, and saw a shadow cast across the window. Something was standing just outside the RV. The road keeps turning back. I threw the RV into gear and stomped the gas pedal. The tires squealed, and I sped forward, gripping the wheel so tightly my fingers ached. The road blurred past in streaks of gold and black. My eyes darted to the side mirror. For a split second I saw it. The tall figure, standing motionless in the middle of the road behind me. And then, just as quickly, it turned its head toward me. I didn't see a face, only darkness where one should be. I squeezed my eyes shut and kept driving. I couldn't think, couldn't rationalize. My whole body screamed go. I don't know how far I drove before I saw it again. The rest stopped. The vending machine humming. The locked visitor center. The same goddamn place. A choked sound slipped from my throat. No, this wasn't possible. I had been driving straight. There were no turns, no exits. I couldn't be back here. But I was. Breaking the loop. I slammed the brakes and stumbled out of the RV, gasping for air. The golden sky pressed down on me, warm and suffocating. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the endless horizon. The same stillness. The same eerie quiet. The sun was too large. I hadn't noticed it before, but now, standing outside, I saw the way it pulsed, a faint shimmer around its edges. Like it was breathing. A wave of nausea hit me. I doubled over, gripping my knees. I had to get out. I had to break this. I turned back to the RV, then froze. The figure was standing beside it. Closer now. No more than 10 feet away. My breath hitched. My body refused to move. The golden light made its features indistinct, but I knew it was staring at me. And then, in the silence, it spoke. Only it wasn't a voice. It was the sound of the vending machine humming. Then the knocking against the window. Then the tires skidding on asphalt. A dozen different sounds, stitched together in a horrible, discordant mockery of speech. The words barely formed, but I understood them. You do not belong here. A violent shiver ran down my spine. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The figure didn't move. It just stood there waiting. And then I realized, it wasn't stopping me from leaving. It was warning me. The sky is wrong. I don't know how I managed to get back in the RV. I don't remember unlocking the doors or turning the key. All I remember is driving. Not forward. Back. I turned the RV around and retraced my path, watching the golden sky warp above me. The moment I did, the air felt different. Thicker, like I was pushing through something unseen. The sun loomed large in the rearview mirror, pulsing like a living thing. I kept my eyes forward. I didn't look back. And then, the light shifted. Not darker, but redder. And for the first time, the clock on my dashboard changed. 7:43 p.m. I gasped. Something snapped in the air, like a rubber band pulled too tight. I blinked, and the golden glow was gone. The world was suddenly bathed in deep, bruised purples and blues, a real sunset. And the highway ahead was new, unfamiliar. I was somewhere else. And behind me, in the mirror, the figure stood at the edge of the road, watching, waiting, the return of the golden light. I thought I had escaped. For a moment, I believed I had finally broken free. The sunset had changed. The sky had shifted from that unnatural golden glow into something real. Deep purples, fading blues, the last streaks of red bleeding into the horizon. The road ahead looked different, unfamiliar. I should have felt relief. But instead, all I felt was dread, because the figure was still there, standing at the edge of the road in my mirror, watching, waiting. I kept driving, refusing to look back again. The RV rumbled beneath me, the tires gripping unfamiliar pavement. This had to be a new stretch of highway. This was different, right? And then, the golden light crept back. It was subtle at first, the kind of thing you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. The shadows stretching a little too long, the warmth in the air rising, despite the sun being nearly gone. And then, in my peripheral vision, the light began to seep in. I flicked my eyes toward the dashboard. 7:42 p.m. No. I slammed my hand against the screen, as if hitting it would knock reality back into place. But the numbers didn't change. The sunset wasn't ending. It was resetting. The sun moves in the mirror. My hands clenched around the steering wheel, my breath turning shallow. This wasn't possible. I had just seen it, the real sunset. I had broken through. I had escaped. I risked a glance at the side mirror, and my stomach plummeted. The sun had moved. Not in the way it should, drifting slowly across the sky. No, this was wrong. It had jumped positions. One moment, it was near the horizon. The next, it was higher, like someone had dragged it backward, like time itself was being rewound. I yanked my gaze away. I refused to look again. I just needed to drive. I needed to get as far away as possible before it. The radio turned on by itself. A burst of static hissed through the speakers. I jolted in my seat, heart hammering. My hand shot toward the knob, twisting it off. But the sound didn't stop. The dial turned beneath my fingers, but the static kept going, rising in volume. And beneath the distortion, a voice. Turn around. It wasn't human. Not really. The voice came through in patches, warping and shifting, as if it were made from 100 different sounds stitched together. Turn around. I sucked in a breath, my whole body locking up. I wouldn't. I couldn't. The static rose into a piercing screech, a pressure building inside my skull. The words tangled, breaking apart. Turn around, look. I slammed my fist against the dash. The radio cut out instantly. Silence flooded the RV. I sucked in a shaking breath, gripping the wheel. My skin felt too hot, the air thick and stifling. I was starting to sweat, the golden light pouring in from every direction. It was like the sun itself was closing in. Then, a shadow moved across the windshield. Something is outside. I saw it. For a fraction of a second, something crossed the road ahead. Too fast for me to fully register, but I caught enough to know. It wasn't human. It was tall. Its limbs were too long. And even in the golden light, its body cast no shadow. The RV shuddered. A deep, metallic groan vibrated through the floorboards, like something was scraping along the undercarriage. My breath caught. I didn't stop. I didn't even let my foot ease off the gas. I just kept driving, my pulse hammering so hard it shook my vision. The RV groaned again. Something was dragging beneath it. I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling. The screen was still frozen at 7:42 p.m. I flicked on the front camera, aiming it toward my feet. And my stomach dropped. There was a hand beneath my seat, not pressed against the floor, not reaching up. No, it was stretching sideways, as if it was growing out of the RV itself. Its fingers were impossibly long. The skin was too smooth, too perfect, like it had never been real to begin with. Reality starts to fracture. I dropped the phone. My throat tightened, a wave of nausea rolling through me. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. The RV lurched. The wheel locked up. I screamed, yanking at it, but it wouldn't budge. The whole vehicle shuddered, metal groaning as if something was pulling it backward. Then, the sun blinked. Like a glitch. A fraction of a second where everything in the sky flickered. And suddenly the road ahead was gone. No highway. No trees. Just an endless stretch of golden light. The RV wasn't moving anymore. It was floating, suspended in something vast and empty. I gasped, my hands trembling against the wheel. My seatbelt pressed into my chest, but there was no gravity, no weight. Just a terrifying sense of nothingness. Then the radio crackled again, and I heard my own voice. You shouldn't be here. The recording wasn't from today. It was from yesterday. I recognized it immediately, something I had said offhandedly to myself while driving. But now played back through the speakers, it sounded wrong. Twisted, like something else had been listening. The words played again, distorted and warping. You shouldn't be here. A slow, dawning horror crept through me. I reached for the ignition, fingers fumbling to turn the key. But it wasn't there anymore. The dashboard was smooth. No buttons. No dials. No ignition. Just a blank, seamless surface. Like the RV had never been a vehicle at all. Like it had never existed. The sun has a face. I couldn't breathe. I reached for the door, but there was no handle. The walls had smoothed out, blending into the windows. The windshield was no longer glass, it was just light. And in the center of it, a face began to take shape. Not human, not anything I could understand. Just an impression. A vast, stretching thing embedded inside the sun. Watching me, my body refused to move. The figure from the road stood behind me now, closer than ever. A whisper brushed against my ear, a voice made of static and thunder. The sunset never ends. And then, everything went dark. The darkness lasts a second too long. The moment everything went dark, I thought it was over. Maybe I'd finally blacked out from fear. Maybe this nightmare had finally snapped like a frayed wire, and I'd wake up somewhere else. But no, the darkness lingered. A second too long. I wasn't unconscious. I wasn't dreaming. I was awake. And in that black void, I wasn't alone. Something moved. Not with sound, but with presence. A shift in the air, a disturbance in the space around me. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. Something right next to me. Breathing. Waiting. The sun flickers like a dying light. Light flooded back in. Not the warm glow of sunrise. Not the fading hues of dusk. This was wrong. The sun above me flickered, like a failing fluorescent bulb. The RV reappeared around me. My hands still gripped the wheel. My body was still pressed into the seat. But the world was distorted. The highway rippled. The trees at the roadside bent at unnatural angles. And in the mirror, the figure stood closer. Its head tilted. Its body shifted, stretching impossibly tall, as if its shape wasn't bound by flesh and bone. A voice, my own voice, whispered through the radio. Keep driving. Don't stop. My throat closed up. I slammed my foot against the gas pedal, but nothing happened. The RV didn't move. The speedometer flickered wildly, jumping between numbers 0, 75, 13, 99, before settling on a symbol. A sun. A never-setting sun. I see the road ahead, but it's not the same. The landscape had changed. The highway no longer stretched into the horizon. Instead, it looped. A perfect circle. I could see my own taillights in the distance ahead. I wasn't driving forward. I was driving back into myself. A choked gasp tore from my throat. My hands shook on the wheel. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. I turned the wheel hard. The RV should have flipped. The tires should have screamed against the asphalt. But instead, the road bent with me, like the world itself was adjusting, twisting to keep me on its path. I wasn't controlling the vehicle anymore. Something else was. The sun is breathing. I risked a glance at the sky, and my stomach dropped. The sun was breathing. Its light expanded and contracted in slow, rhythmic pulses like a giant, slumbering thing inhaling and exhaling. The clouds shifted unnaturally, twisting in patterns that weren't made by the wind. A shape emerged within the sun's glow. A face. Not human. Not fully formed. But watching me. It knew. It had been watching me this entire time. A scream crawled up my throat, but I couldn't make a sound. Then, the passenger seat creaked. Something sat down beside me. I am not the first. I couldn't move. Couldn't look. Every muscle in my body locked, my breath coming in short, uneven bursts. I didn't need to turn my head to know that it was right there. The figure from the road. The one I'd been seeing in the mirror, in the corners of my vision, just out of reach. It was in the RV with me. The seat sagged under its weight. The air turned thick, suffocating. And then, it spoke, but not in words, not in a voice I could fully understand. It was a feeling, a knowledge that forced itself into my mind, pressing against my skull like an unbearable weight. I was not the first. Others had been here before me, trapped, driving, endlessly, until the sunset took them. There's only one way out. The road looped again. I saw the glow of my own headlights appearing ahead, a horrifying mirror of my own vehicle just miles away. I wasn't getting anywhere. I wasn't leaving. There was only one way out. I had to break the cycle. I yanked my hands off the wheel. For the first time since this nightmare began, I took my foot off the gas. The RV should have stopped, but it didn't. It kept moving. The wheel turned itself. I wasn't in control anymore. The entity in the passenger seat had taken over, and it was taking me somewhere I could never return from. The wrong exit. A new road appeared ahead, one that wasn't there before. It led off the highway, disappearing into a landscape that didn't make sense. The horizon curved upward, the land bent sideways, and in the distance, the sun was waiting for me. My hands shook. The RV veered toward the exit. I could feel it. This was the end. Not death. Something worse. Something that meant I would never be found again. I had seconds to act. Seconds before I was lost forever. I make a choice. I did the only thing I could. I threw my entire weight into the door and jumped. The world tilted. The wind roared in my ears. The pavement rushed up to meet me. And then, everything went black. Silence. Stillness. I floated in an endless, quiet void. For a moment, I thought, this is it. But then, a sound. A distant rumble. Like thunder. The smell of asphalt. The sensation of motion. My eyes snapped open, and I was back in the driver's seat. The road stretched ahead. The sunset glowed in the distance. The RV was still moving. I was still trapped. I should be dead. The realization hit me like a crash I never felt. I had jumped. I should be on the highway, bleeding, bones shattered. I should be gasping my last breath on cracked asphalt. But I wasn't. I was here, back in the RV. The wheel was warm beneath my hands. The seatbelt was strapped across my chest, even though I never buckled it. The road stretched endlessly ahead. The sky was still that same damn color. The sunset hadn't moved. I hadn't moved. A sharp inhale shuddered through me. This was it. I had tried to break free, and I had failed. The radio knows my name. A voice crackled through the static. Not music. Not a broadcast. A whisper. It said my name. My blood turned to ice. The whispering didn't stop. Did you really think you could leave? I turned the dial, static. I yanked the volume knob. It only got louder. The voice was inside the RV now. It came from the speakers, from the air vents, from the hum of the engine itself. You belong here. You never stopped driving. You never even jumped. It was always just the illusion of choice. My stomach lurched. No. No. I remembered the wind against my face. The fall. The rush of pavement. Didn't I? Had I really jumped? Or had I just imagined it? I gripped the wheel with white-knuckled hands, my heart beat a thunderous drum in my ears. Was this a memory? Or just another part of the loop? I see myself in the rearview mirror. I caught movement in the mirror. A figure in the back of the RV. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry as sandpaper. Slowly, so painfully slowly, I turned my head. No one. Just empty space. But in the mirror, there I was. Not as I was now. The reflection of me was older. Eyes hollow. Skin gaunt. Clothes torn. A version of me that had been here for years. Decades. Forever. The reflection tilted its head. Its lips curled into something not quite a smile. And then, in a voice that was exactly like mine. Just drive. There's nothing else. I slammed my fist against the glass. But the reflection didn't break. The road starts to vanish. The highway beneath me began to fade. Not crack. Not crumble. It was peeling away. The road wasn't real. It had never been real. I could see beneath it now. A void. Not black. Not empty. A swirling, endless landscape of color and shape, shifting in ways my brain couldn't process. The thing beneath reality. The place this road had been built to trap people like me. I stared too long, and the world shuddered. Don't look, the radio hissed. Underscore, if you understand, you'll never leave. I tore my gaze away, and the road was solid again. Had it ever been gone? Or was that just another trick of the loop? I didn't know anymore. I see the other drivers. Headlights. Far ahead. Then behind. Then beside me. Other RVs. Other vehicles. Driving. Endlessly. I turned my head and locked eyes with another driver. Their face was sunken hollow. Their lips moved, soundlessly begging, pleading. But they never stopped driving. Their hands stayed on the wheel, knuckles white with effort. The terror in their eyes was something beyond human comprehension. Then, they flickered, like a dying image on an old screen. And they were gone, like they'd never been there. But I knew the truth now. I was not alone. There were others. Hundreds. Thousands. Millions. Driving just like me. Forever. The last signpost. A sign appeared on the side of the road. It hadn't been there before. I had driven this stretch 100, 1,000 times. I knew every inch. But now a new sign. A final warning. It was old, rusted, the paint almost unreadable. But I could still make out the words. You are approaching the end of the road. Keep driving. Do not stop. Do not look back. A scream built in my throat. I slammed my foot on the brakes. Nothing. I yanked the wheel. The RV didn't swerve. I wasn't in control. I had never been in control. I was just another driver. Another soul on the never-ending road. The final choice. Acceptance or madness. There was no escape. No end. No one coming to find me. No one even knew I was here. And I knew. This place would never let me die. Not really. I could try to jump again. Try to crash. Try to throw myself into the void beneath the road. It wouldn't matter. I would always wake up behind the wheel. Because that's what this place was. A limbo. A loop. A prison with no walls, no doors. Just an endless stretch of road and a sun that never sets. And I was part of it now. Like all the others. Like all the ones before me. My hands settled on the wheel. The road stretched ahead. The sunset burned in the sky. I took a slow breath. And I drove. Because there was nothing else left. Next story. The first awakening. I woke up with the sun already creeping through the RV's curtains, streaks of gold stretching across the small space. My head pounded with an unfamiliar weight, like I'd been hit with a brick in my sleep. Something felt off. The air inside the RV was stale, like it had been closed up for days. My mouth was dry, and my tongue felt like sandpaper. As I tried to shake off the grogginess, a strange realization settled in. I couldn't remember going to sleep. Not just that, I couldn't remember anything from the night before. I sat up abruptly, my heart picking up speed. The last thing I recalled was pulling into a gas station, filling up the tank, and what? Where had we parked? What time was it? I turned to look at the others. Jenna, my girlfriend, was curled up in the passenger seat, her dark hair falling over her face. Mike, my best friend, was sprawled across the small couch, snoring lightly. His girlfriend, Emily, was tucked into the booth seat at the dining table, her arm draped over her eyes. None of them were stirring. I swallowed the rising panic in my throat and checked my phone. Battery, 78%. Time, 7:13 a.m. I tapped the screen, flipping through my messages, nothing. No new texts, no calls, no notifications. I opened my photos, thinking maybe I'd taken something last night to jog my memory. Nothing. The last picture was from yesterday evening, a shot of the gas station, the price sign glowing against a dusky sky. But there was nothing after that. I pulled the curtain aside and peeked outside. We were parked on the side of an empty road, surrounded by towering pine trees. The asphalt stretched in both directions, vanishing into the distance. No buildings. No signs. Just nothing. A chill ran down my spine. We were in the middle of nowhere. And none of us remembered how we got here. The others wake up. Jenna stirred first, stretching with a groggy sigh before sitting up. She blinked at me in confusion. Ugh, I feel like I got hit by a truck, she muttered, rubbing her forehead. Yeah, I agreed. But do you remember last night? She frowned. Last night? Yeah. How we got here? When we parked. Her expression darkened as she looked around. Wait, where are we? I could see her struggling, grasping for memories that weren't there. Mike groaned, rolling onto his side. What the hell, man? Why are you guys talking so loud? Mike, I said, my voice firm. Do you remember last night? He paused. I watched as confusion flickered across his face, his brows furrowing. Yeah, we stopped for gas, right? He rubbed his temple. And then, I don't know. I guess I was tired. Emily sat up suddenly, her face pale. I feel sick, she murmured. Mike reached for her instinctively, but I could see the unease in his posture. Something was wrong. We weren't just tired. We weren't just confused. Something had erased the past 12 hours. The first signs of something wrong. I climbed into the driver's seat and checked the odometer. We had driven over 200 miles overnight, but none of us had been awake for it. Jenna moved to the kitchenette, rummaging through the cabinets. Did we eat last night? Because I'm starving. I turned my attention back to my phone, flipping through the location history. Nothing. As if my phone had been off since we left the gas station. Guys, Jenna said, holding up an empty snack wrapper. Someone ate this. Emily glanced around. Okay, maybe we just forgot. Maybe we were exhausted? That still doesn't explain why we don't remember anything, I said. Jenna crossed her arms. Or why we're parked in the middle of nowhere. I turned the key in the ignition. The RV rumbled to life, the dashboard lighting up. I froze. The fuel tank was full. That made no sense. If we'd driven over 200 miles overnight, we should be missing at least half a tank. But it was completely full, like we had just left the gas station. A creeping unease crawled up my spine. Had we stopped somewhere? Had someone else filled the tank? If so, who? Something's watching us. Mike grabbed his phone and swore under his breath. What? I asked. Dude, check your camera roll. I opened my gallery again, my pulse racing. A new picture had appeared. It wasn't there when I checked earlier. My breath caught in my throat. The photo showed the inside of the RV, taken from the driver's seat. It was pitch black, except for the faint glow of the dashboard, and in the reflection of the windshield. A figure stood at the back of the RV. It wasn't one of us. The shape was tall, thin, distorted. Shadowy. Just standing there. Watching. The timestamp? 3:04 a.m. Jenna gasped. That's not funny. I didn't take this, I said quickly. None of us did. The silence in the RV was deafening. Emily whispered, then who did? A low rumble echoed outside. Distant thunder. For the first time, I noticed how eerily still it was outside. No wind. No birds. Just an unnatural silence, pressing in from all sides. Mike exhaled sharply. Okay, this is messed up. Maybe we got drugged or something. I shook my head. If someone broke in, why didn't they steal anything? And why would they take a picture of us? Jenna added. The unease thickened, a silent force weighing down on all of us. Something was happening here. Something we couldn't explain. And we were already too deep into it. Final thought before the next night. We debated what to do. Mike wanted to keep driving. Jenna thought we should stay put until we figured out what was going on. Emily didn't say much. She looked shaken, like she was still processing it all. Eventually, we decided to drive until we found the nearest town. But a part of me already knew something. It wouldn't matter. We could drive all night. We could try to run. But by morning, we wouldn't remember any of it. And whatever had taken that photo, whatever had been inside the RV with us, would come back again. And next time, maybe it wouldn't just be watching. Trying to make sense of it. The road stretched ahead, endless and empty. We had been driving for over an hour now, watching the towering pines blur past the windows. The sun had fully risen, but instead of feeling relief, the light only made our situation feel more unnatural. None of us remembered last night. None of us knew where we were. And worst of all, that picture on my phone, asterisk asterisk, the one showing someone or something inside the RV at 3:04 a.m., asterisk asterisk, sat like a weight in the back of my mind. It made no sense. I kept checking my phone for clues. No messages, no location history, no memory of the past 12 hours. Every attempt to rationalize, it only made the dread sink deeper. Jenna sat in the passenger seat, her arms crossed, staring at the road like she was waiting for an answer to appear in the distance. Mike and Emily sat at the dinette, whispering about something I couldn't quite make out. The RV's tires hummed against the road. The silence inside felt too loud. Finally, I spoke. We need to figure this out. Jenna exhaled. Yeah, no kidding. Let's go over everything, I said, gripping the wheel tighter. Last thing we remember is stopping for gas. Right. Yeah, Jenna said slowly. That's the last clear thing I remember. Mike leaned forward. Okay, but let's assume we drove through the night. Someone had to be awake, right? We don't all just black out at the same time. Unless someone did this to us, Emily whispered. The words sent a chill down my spine. You mean like we were drugged? Jenna asked. Emily nodded. Maybe at the gas station. What if someone put something in our drinks, or... No, Mike interrupted, shaking his head. That doesn't explain the picture. It doesn't explain how the RV kept driving on its own. Jenna turned to me. Could we have been sleep driving? I hesitated. No way. That doesn't explain why the gas tank is full. Silence settled over us again. Everything about this situation was wrong. The missing memories, the filled tank, the eerie photo. It was like we had been erased and placed somewhere new, continuing like nothing had happened. Like a glitch. And I hated how real that thought felt. Weird things start happening. We kept driving, hoping to find a town or a sign. Anything that would ground us in reality. But the road never changed. No exits. No street signs. Just an endless stretch of pavement, winding through the forest. After another hour, I pulled over. We need to check our stuff, I said. Maybe there's something that'll tell us what happened. We started searching the RV. Jenna checked the fridge and cabinets. There's food missing, she said. Stuff we definitely ate, but I don't remember eating it. Mike found a half-empty water bottle sitting near the driver's seat. Whoever was driving must have been drinking this. Emily grabbed her phone and gasped. Guys, my call log is empty. Jenna and I exchanged a look. Emily turned the screen toward us. It's not just that I don't have any new calls. Every call I made yesterday is gone. I checked mine again. Same thing. Okay, this is seriously messed up, Mike muttered. Then Jenna opened the glove compartment and froze. Guys, look at this. She pulled out a crumpled gas station receipt. It had a timestamp, 3:17 a.m., and scribbled at the bottom in smudged, frantic handwriting was one chilling sentence. Don't forget, it comes back every night. A sick feeling twisted in my stomach. Mike swallowed hard. What the hell does that mean? I turned the receipt over. There was one more thing written on the back. Check your arms. For a moment, none of us moved. Then slowly, Jenna rolled up her sleeve. A small red mark sat just below her wrist. A fresh needle mark. The fear sets in. Panic hit like a brick. Mike checked his arm. Then Emily. Then me. We all had them. Something had drugged us. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Someone had been inside the RV, inside with us. Not just watching, not just taking photos, but doing something to us. Jenna covered her mouth. Oh my God! Emily was shaking. We need to get out of here. We need to find help, now. I started the RV, my hands sweaty against the wheel. The receipt, the photo, the missing memories, none of this was a coincidence. Someone was doing this to us. And if that note was right, it would happen again tonight. The hours start slipping. We drove for hours, and hours, and hours. The road never changed. We should have passed something. A town, a gas station, a rest stop, anything. But it was just trees. Always trees. Mike checked his phone. Dude, it's still 12:15. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard. 12:15 p.m. It had said 12:15 an hour ago. Jenna looked at her phone. Mine says the same thing. The realization hit all at once. Time wasn't moving. Emily started breathing fast. That's not possible. That's not. The radio crackled. We all jumped. The dial spun on its own, skipping between static and faint, warped voices. Then, a single phrase came through. You're not supposed to wake up. Then the radio went silent. The RV was dead silent. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. We weren't alone. Something was playing with us. The drive goes nowhere. We had to keep moving. I pushed the gas pedal, trying to ignore the suffocating feeling in my chest. Where are we? Emily whispered. How is this happening? Mike gritted his teeth. There has to be an explanation. Jenna shook her head. What if there isn't? Silence. None of us wanted to admit the truth. We weren't on a normal road. We weren't in a normal situation. Something was keeping us here, and nightfall was coming. I didn't want to think about what would happen when the sun went down. The second picture. Jenna grabbed my arm suddenly. Check your photos. I hesitated. My skin crawled just thinking about it, but I opened my gallery, and there it was. Another new photo. A selfie. Me, sitting in the driver's seat, eyes wide open. But the timestamp was wrong. 3:04 a.m. The exact same time as the first photo. A slow, cold horror spread through my body. Mike whispered, You weren't awake. No, I wasn't. But something else was, and it had been using my body. The fear of sleeping again. The second photo confirmed the one thing we had been trying to ignore. Whatever was happening to us wasn't just memory loss. It was something worse. Something that could use us while we were unconscious. The photo was impossible. I was sleeping, but something had taken a picture from my phone. Something had held it in my own hands, aimed it at my face, and pressed the button. A deep, cold fear settled in my gut. We couldn't let it happen again. We couldn't fall asleep tonight. Jenna, sitting next to me, squeezed her arms against her chest. I don't want to sleep. I don't want to. Emily nodded rapidly, her hands shaking. We need to fight it. If we stay awake, maybe we can break this. Mike rubbed his face hard, exhaling. Yeah, okay. We don't sleep. We'll do shifts, take turns keeping each other awake. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. We don't stop driving. The RV kept moving forward, the trees still blurring past. We had no idea where we were going. We had no idea if we could escape. But one thing was clear. Nightfall was coming, and we had to be ready. The road that loops. Hours passed. At least, we thought they did. Our phones still read 12:15 p.m. Time wasn't moving. But outside, the sun had shifted slightly lower in the sky. It was proof, at least, that the day was advancing. Then Jenna gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. She pointed out the window. I followed her gaze, and my blood turned to ice. We had passed that tree before. It wasn't just a tree, it was a large bent tree, split in the middle, its dead branches reaching outward like clawed hands. We had driven past it this morning. We weren't going straight. We were looping. Emily covered her mouth. No. I pressed the gas harder. The RV sped up. 5 minutes passed. Then there it was again. The bent tree. We weren't going anywhere. I swerved the RV onto the dirt shoulder, gripping the wheel, my breath coming in sharp bursts. "This isn't real," Jenna whispered. Mike stood up, pacing in the small space of the RV. "We're in some kind of, I don't know, some kind of trap." I shut my eyes for a second, trying to think. The road wasn't real. The time wasn't real. Then what was? The missing time. Jenna grabbed my arm. "We need to test something." I opened my eyes. "What?" She held up her phone. "Set a timer." I hesitated. But then, I pulled out my phone and set a 1-minute countdown. We all stared at the screen. The numbers ticked down. 0:57, 0:56, 0:55. Nothing happened. Then, the screen glitched. It flashed black for a split second, then returned. And the timer had reset. Back to 1 o'clock. I felt my stomach drop. We all looked at each other, silent. Then Emily said the words that made my skin crawl. "If time isn't moving, then how is the sun setting?" A deep, suffocating fear filled the RV. We all turned toward the windshield. She was right. The sun had dropped even lower. Even though time wasn't moving, the day was still ending. Which meant nightfall was still coming. The voices at sundown. The first time we heard the voices, I thought it was static. A faint whisper, hidden beneath the hum of the tires. I turned down the radio. But the whispers didn't stop. The sound wasn't coming from the speakers. It was coming from inside the RV. I shot a glance at the others. Their faces were pale. "You hear that, right?" Mike whispered. Emily nodded slowly. The voices were too quiet to make out. A low, hissing murmur, like a radio stuck between stations, except it was closer. Like it was just behind the thin walls of the RV. Like something was whispering through the vents. Then Jenna gasped. She grabbed my wrist, pointing at her phone. Another new photo. A picture of all 4 of us, sitting inside the RV. Taken from behind. Like someone was standing at the back of the RV, watching us. The timestamp? 3:04 a.m. The exact time as the others. Emily was breathing too fast, panic setting in. "How is this happening? Who took that?" I slammed my foot on the gas. The RV roared forward. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know if we could even escape. The breaking point. The RV lurched forward, tires spinning on the endless stretch of dark road. My hands were locked on the wheel, knuckles bone white from the force of my grip. We had to keep moving. We couldn't stop. Not when the voices were closing in. Not when something was taking our pictures. Not when the night was coming, even though time wasn't moving. Mike, sitting in the passenger seat, was breathing too fast, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror every few seconds. Emily and Jenna sat behind us, clutching onto each other like lifelines. And then Jenna screamed. "There! In the back!" I snapped my head toward the mirror. A figure. Tall. Shadowed. Standing in the rear of the RV, just behind Emily and Jenna. I barely caught a glimpse before the lights flickered violently, plunging us into stuttering darkness. Emily shrieked, scrambling away from the seat. "It's here! It's in here!" Mike spun around, fumbling with the overhead light switch. "Turn the lights back on." I swerved the RV wildly, gripping the wheel, my pulse slamming against my ribs. The dashboard lights glitched, flashing erratically. Then all at once, they died completely. We were plunged into blackness. And in the dark, I heard it. A breath. Close. Right behind me. Something was inches from my ear. The truth in the dark. My pulse pounded so hard I thought my chest would burst. Then, the lights flickered back on. And everything was normal. No figure. No breath. Just the four of us, trembling, gripping the edges of our seats. For a moment, nobody spoke. And then, Emily pulled in a sharp, ragged breath. "Guys, my phone. My camera app, it's open." Her voice was shaking. She slowly turned the screen toward us. A new photo had been taken. A photo of us. But something was wrong. I stared. Jenna covered her mouth, and Mike swore under his breath. Because in the picture, we were all asleep. We were never awake. "No," Jenna whispered. "No, no, no, no." Mike snatched the phone from Emily's hands, his face twisted in panic. "This doesn't make sense. We're awake. This isn't possible." But deep in my gut, I knew. I knew exactly what this meant. "We were never awake," I whispered. Silence. The words hung in the air, suffocating. I slowly turned toward the clock. 3:04 a.m. Exactly the same as before. The same time as every other night. It wasn't resetting. It had never moved. We had been dreaming this whole time. Or rather, something was making us think we were awake. A deep, gut-wrenching nausea filled my stomach. We're trapped in it. A loop. A dream. A thing. Emily was crying now, shaking her head violently. "I don't understand. I don't. How do we wake up?" Jenna was gripping her temples, whispering something under her breath. And Mike just stared, like he was remembering something, like he was putting the pieces together. Finally, he looked at me, his voice hollow. "We already tried," he whispered. I froze. Tried? My breath caught in my throat. For the first time, something shifted in my mind, something just out of reach. A half-memory, a sense of déjà vu, like we had done this before, over and over and over. I turned toward Mike, my voice low. "How do you know that?" He swallowed hard. Then he held up his phone, and my entire body went cold, because in his photos, there were hundreds of pictures of us, each one taken at exactly 3:04 a.m., each one of us in a slightly different position, like we had lived this night before, like we had tried to wake up, failed, and restarted, countless times. The final attempt. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, scrolling through the photos on my own device. And there they were. More pictures. Some taken at different angles. Some blurry. Some with our expressions filled with terror, like we had figured it out before and failed. I looked up at Mike, at Jenna, at Emily. We all knew now. We had been stuck in this loop for God knows how long. So the question was, why? I clenched my jaw, swallowing the bile in my throat. There has to be a way out. Emily wiped her face, eyes red. But what if we already tried everything? I exhaled sharply. Then we try again. Jenna suddenly sat up, eyes wide. We changed the pattern. Mike furrowed his brows. What? She was nodding quickly now, something frantic in her voice. The loop. If we keep repeating the same actions, we keep resetting, right? Then we break it. We do something we've never done before. I frowned, trying to think through the fog. What haven't we tried? Silence. Then Mike turned to me. His eyes were dark. I think we have to let it in. The choice. A cold silence settled in the RV. Jenna was shaking her head. No. No way. That's crazy. Emily was gripping the table, staring at the floor. But, somewhere deep inside, I knew he was right. We had tried everything else. This was the one thing we had never done. Stopped running. Stopped fighting. And let it take us. I swallowed hard. Okay. Jenna let out a sharp, panicked breath. Are you serious? We can't. Emily stood. Do it. Jenna turned to her in horror, but Emily's face was unreadable. We've been trapped for too long, she whispered. We have to try. I nodded. Mike took a deep breath, turning toward the back of the RV. Then slowly, he reached out and unlocked the door. The end of the loop. For a long moment, nothing happened. The air felt thick, heavy, like we were sitting at the bottom of an ocean. Then, the lights flickered violently. The RV shook. The whispering returned, louder this time, circling us like a storm. 3:04 a.m. I felt it before I saw it. A shadow, emerging from the back of the RV, just beyond our reach. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But I stayed still. I let it come. The moment its presence touched us, The world went dark. A new morning. When I opened my eyes, I was staring at the ceiling. For a second, my mind was blank. And then, a flood of memories came rushing back. I gasped, sitting up too fast. The RV was quiet. The others were stirring. I turned toward the window, and my breath caught in my throat. Outside, the sun was rising. A real sunrise. For the first time in forever, time was moving forward. Jenna let out a shaky laugh, tears streaming down her face. We did it. Emily pressed a hand to her chest, exhaling. It's over. Mike looked at me, his expression unreadable. I turned back toward the window, and for the first time, I truly believed it. The loop was broken. We were free. A strange sense of relief. The rising sun painted the sky in shades of gold and soft pink. It was beautiful, but it felt wrong, like something was watching us even now. Emily sat by the window, staring at the sunrise with a dazed expression. Jenna was hugging herself, shivering despite the warmth of the RV. Mike hadn't said a word since we woke up. He just kept staring at his hands, fingers flexing as if trying to confirm they were real. We should have been celebrating. We survived. But deep inside, a sickness was growing in my stomach. Something still didn't feel right. The first sign. I reached for my phone. My hands trembled as I checked the time. 7:12 a.m. Time was moving forward. That should have been proof we were free. But as I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. Because in my photo gallery, beneath the endless 3:04 a.m. pictures, a new one had appeared. 6:59 a.m. A picture of us sleeping. I stiffened, fingers tightening around the phone. No, we woke up. We woke up. So why was there another picture? My pulse hammered in my ears. I turned to the others, heart racing. Guys, I think something's wrong. We're still in it. They turned to me, confused. I held up my phone. A new picture just appeared. Jenna frowned. What do you mean? I zoomed in. The picture was grainy but clear enough to see. The four of us, slumped in our seats, asleep. Mike's face drained of color. Emily covered her mouth. Jenna's breathing hitched. But we're awake. A cold, sickening thought curled in my stomach. Are we? No one spoke. No one moved. A horrifying realization settled over me. What if the loop hadn't ended? What if it had just changed? The cracks start to show. Emily stood up too fast, shaking her head. No, we broke it. This isn't possible. She stormed to the kitchenette, yanking open cabinets, drawers, anything to find proof of reality. Then she grabbed a coffee mug. A simple white cup. Plain. Normal. Until she flipped it over. 3:04 a.m. was printed on the bottom. She dropped it. It shattered against the floor. Jenna let out a sharp breath. No. She grabbed a handful of granola bars from the counter, tearing one open with trembling hands. The expiration date was printed clearly on the wrapper. March 4th. I took a step back, chest tightening. My hands itched like something was crawling under my skin. I turned to Mike, but he wouldn't look at me. Because he already knew. We're still in it, he whispered. Memory gaps. The RV suddenly felt too small. The air too thick. I racked my brain for an answer, but something was missing. Something important. Wait. I swallowed. Do you guys remember going to sleep last night? Emily's face twisted. No, but... Jenna shook her head violently. Stop. Don't start thinking like that. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't remember anything before waking up. The last thing I remembered was the shadow in the RV, the lights flickering. And then, nothing. No memory of how we got here. No memory of what happened before we woke up. Like our minds had been wiped clean. Just like every other time. The sound returns. A deep, low vibration hummed through the RV. A familiar sound. Jenna clutched her head, wincing. No, we stopped this. We stopped it. Emily backed against the counter, tears in her eyes. Please, no. Mike went pale. Because we all recognized it. The hum. The static. The sound that always came right before the reset. I pressed my hands against my ears, but it didn't stop. It was inside us. Inside our bones. I clenched my jaw, trying to breathe. We have to get out. Mike's voice was hollow. How? We already let it in. That was supposed to be the way out. I turned to the door. There was only one thing we hadn't tried. Leaving the RV. Outside isn't real. Without a second thought, I lunged for the door. Mike tried to grab me, but I was faster. I yanked it open and stepped outside. My breath hitched. It was wrong. The sunrise was too perfect. The trees were too still. The air smelled like nothing. like a memory of a morning instead of a real one. I turned back toward the RV, but something was missing. Jenna, Emily, Mike, they were gone. The inside of the RV was pitch black, and I realized it wasn't real. The RV was a cage, but outside was a trap, and I had just stepped into it. It's not over. I tried to run, but the ground sank beneath my feet. The sky flickered like a glitching screen. And then I heard it, a whisper, from inside the RV. Come back inside. My stomach turned ice cold. It wasn't my friends. It wasn't them. Something else was in there. Something else had been in there all along, pretending to be them. My pulse pounded as I took a step backward. Then, the door slammed shut, and the RV vanished, leaving me alone, in the middle of nowhere. The final memory. A new sound filled the air. A soft beeping. I turned, and froze. A hospital monitor. The rhythmic beep 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 of a heart rate machine. A hospital bed. And in it, me. Eyes closed. Still, lying there like I'd been asleep for a long time. And standing beside me were my friends. Jenna, Mike, Emily. But something was wrong. Their eyes were empty. Their smiles were too wide. And then, in perfect unison, they turned to face me and spoke. Go back to sleep. The last sunrise. I gasped and woke up. The RV. The sunrise. Jenna. Emily. Mike. All exactly the same. As if nothing happened. As if I had just woken up for the first time. But I remembered everything. I remembered the pictures. The missing memories. The wrongness of the outside world. And I realized the truth. We weren't stuck in a loop. We were never meant to wake up. The RV wasn't the trap. Reality was. I turned to my friends, my voice shaking. We never left. They blinked at me confused. Like they didn't remember. Like they had already forgotten. Like soon. I would too. And outside, the sun kept rising. Just like it always had. Just like it always would. Forever. And ever. And ever.